The smartphone in your pocket may say Apple or Samsung, but the companies that actually make it work are probably ones you've never heard of. And the beginning of that story might surprise you. We go back in 1947. Three scientists walked into a laboratory, Bell Labs, in New Jersey. The names were John Bardeen, Walter Brattain, and William Shockley. They weren't trying to invent a smartphone, of course. In fact, the most advanced technology most people carried in their pockets back then was probably a pack of cigarettes. Computers in the 1940s were enormous machines that filled the entire rooms and run on fragile vacuum tubes that overheated and failed constantly. So these scientists were trying to build something smaller and faster and more reliable. And after months of experiments, they created a tiny electronic switch and they called it the transistor. At that time, maybe it looks like a small improvement in electronics. But today, the processor inside your smartphone contains tens of billions of transistors. Billions of these tiny switches that work together in a device that fits in your pocket. But there is something most people never think about. When you look at your phone today, you can see a brand name. But the companies that actually make that device possible are mostly invisible. And I call that the illusion of the smartphone brand. For example, take your phone out of your pocket and then look for a moment at the back. Probably you will see a logo. It can be Apple or Samsung Electronics. Most of people assume that these companies build everything inside the device. But the modern technology doesn't really work like that. In reality, your smartphone is the result of a global supply chain involving thousands of different companies. And inside that small device, you will find processors, memory chips, wireless communication systems, camera sensors, of course, we think it's very important nowadays, and dozens of specialized components. And each of those components is often built by a completely different company. Some design the chips, some they manufacture them, some build the machines that manufacture them, and some build the components that allow the phone to connect to the rest of the world. And this interconnected system is one of the reasons the technology sector looks very different today than it did 25 years ago. That was during the late 90s, the dot-com bubble. And it pushed many technology stocks extreme to extreme valuations. But the bubble burst and the Nasdaq fall almost 80%. Many companies disappeared because of their business model. It was just built on ideas rather than the real infrastructure. But today, the technology industry is built on something far more powerful. The interconnected ecosystems, the companies that build the chips, the software, the sensors, and the communication systems depend on each other. And billions of people, also you, depend on them. Which brings us to something surprising. The most important company in the smartphone industry doesn't sell smartphones at all. In fact, the company that manufactures most of the world's advanced chips is a business many people have never heard of. And it may be the most important technology company on earth. So we go to the first company that is the factory that builds the world's chips, modern semiconductors. And they are incredibly difficult to manufacture. Building a cutting-edge chip factory can cost more than $20 billion. And because of that enormous costs, most technology companies don't manufacture them on their own processes. Instead, they send their designs to the specialized manufacturers. And the most important of those manufacturers is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, often called TSMC. TSMC pioneered a business model called the semiconductor foundry, and instead of designing the chips, it focused entirely on manufacturing them for other companies. That means that the TSMC built chips for companies that are actually competitors. For example, the processors are designed by Apple, and the chips, they are designed by NVIDIA. And the processors, for example, AMD. And TSMC is manufacturing them all. And today the company manufactures 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips, which means that if you own a smartphone or a laptop or a gaming console, there's a very good chance that the chips inside was manufactured in a TSMC factory. But even TSMC depends on something else, because building these advanced chips requires a machine that is so complex that only one company in the world can produce them. These machines are so advanced that each one costs 200 million, just one machine. And without them, the modern smartphone, artificial intelligence, and even the cloud computing would not exist. And that brings us to the most advanced machine in the world, and that's the second company in line. The company that builds these machines is ASML, based in the Netherlands. ASML produces a technology known as an extreme ultraviolet lithography, or EUV. These machines project extremely precise patterns of light onto the silicon wafers. Each machine weighs around 180 tons and it takes months to assemble. And without this EUV lithography, the advanced chips are used in a modern smartphone simply could not be manufactured. Which means the entire semiconductor industry depends on this highly specialized technology. But manufacturing chips is only a part of the story. Because before a chip can be built, it first needs a design. And most smartphones run on the same fundamental design language. In fact, almost every smartphone on Earth speaks the same language inside its processor, and the language was designed by a company that most consumers, again, never heard of. That brings us to the third company that takes care of the language inside your phone, and that company is ARM Holdings. ARM designed the architecture used by the most mobile processors. Think of the architecture as an instruction language that tells the chip how to process all this information. Instead of manufacturing the chips itself, ARM licensed its designs to other companies. And those companies, they built the processors based on ARM's architecture. That's the basic. And because ARM's processors are extremely energy efficient, they are ideal for devices like the smartphones when the battery life matters. Today, over 99% of the smartphones run on the ARM-based processors, which means nearly every smartphone on the planet. It used the technology based on ARM's designs. But processors are only part of what makes the modern phone powerful. Another feature has quietly become one of the biggest selling points in the smartphone markets. Guess what it is? The camera, indeed. It brings us to the fourth company. And that's the company behind your phone camera. And when people compare all the smartphones, they often talk about the megapixels or the lenses. More lenses on your phone, the better it is. But the most important component is the digital camera, is the image sensor. The sensor that converts the light into the digital data. And the one company dominates the market. That is the company, it's called Sony Group. Yes, indeed, the same company known for the cameras, the gaming consoles, and the whole entertainment industry. Sony is also the global leader in smartphone image sensors. And many flagship smartphones rely on Sony sensors to capture photos and videos. And that's the one reason smartphones have replaced the traditional cameras for millions of people. But even the best cameras in the world isn't very useful if the phone can't connect it to the internet. And that connection depends on another company. Now, the last company, number 5, that connects your phone to the modern internet, and it's constantly communicating with each other. That connects to the cellular networks, and they connect to Wi-Fi, and they connect to Bluetooth devices. And much of that wireless technology comes from Qualcomm. Qualcomm develops processors and modern chips used in hundreds of smartphones, models worldwide. Its Snapdragon processors, its power many Android devices. And its modern technology plays a major role in the modern 4G or the 5G networks. And without these wireless systems, smartphones would simply a small computer, with no connection to the outside world. Useless, actually. So, finally, let's say the bigger picture. We have the pack of cigarettes in your pocket. Nowadays, it's changed for the smartphone. Much better, and I hope much healthier. But behind that small device is one of the most complex industrial ecosystems ever created. A network of companies designing these chips, manufacturing them, producing the sensors, and communication systems and components, all working together across the entire continent. And this is one reason the semiconductor industry has become so important that even governments and companies around the world are investing billions to secure the semiconductor supply chains. Because this technology now is powering everything from the smartphone to the artificial intelligence. So, the next time you pick your phone, remember that it represents decades of innovation and global network of companies quietly empowering the digital world, and not difficult to invest in it. We need them, and if you want to see more of these videos, I need them too. So please subscribe and see you next time.